Hi, I'm Peter Dietrich, and this is my teach back for the Princeton Review Korea. Today we'll be examining a few example SAT problems. Specifically, we'll be examining 3 sentence completion problems and 3 or 4 reading comprehension problems. Of course, today, because I don't have a whiteboard, we'll be using poster board, but I don't think it'll make any difference at all. So, question number 1. And this is our first sentence completion problem. And again, to save time, I've written them out beforehand, otherwise there'd be a lot of writing and a bit of delays. This asks us to fill in one blank here. And the sentence reads, the blank of Maria Irene Forney's play, Mud, a realistic room perched on a dirt pile, challenges conventional interpretations of stage scenery. Now, the key to solving this particular problem is to look at the words between the dashes. And these dashes act very similar to parentheses, and in fact they give us what's called parenthetical information. And parenthetical information is additional information or information that restates a term or an idea. And in this particular problem, this phrase, a realistic room perched on a dirt pile, restates or exemplifies the blank. So, in fact, we don't even need to read anything beyond the second dash. So all this is additional information. Now, it may help us, but if we're trying to work quickly, it's not necessary. It's not absolutely necessary. So, we find that we have 5 options: appeal, plot, mood, setting, rehearsal. Now, immediately, you should realize that these are literary terms, and each of the terms relates specifically to plays, although most of them, with perhaps the exception of rehearsal, could also relate to novels or any other type of genre, even film. However, for this question, since we're talking about a play, let's keep a play in mind. Now, appeal is when the playwright tries to connect with the audience by using emotion or tries to bring the audience into the scene. So, a realistic room perched on a dirt pile. That has almost nothing to do with appeal, so we can immediately cross that out. Plot, as I'm sure most of you are familiar with, is the sequence of events or the main story of a play. Again, a realistic room perched on a dirt pile, it has no sequence of events. It's a place or a location, so we can cross this out. Mood is the feeling that the author or the playwright is trying to impart or give to the audience. Right? Think about a scary movie. The mood would be dark and gloomy, or a romantic comedy might be sunny and happy. Again, a realistic room perched on a dirt pile doesn't give us much of a mood. It might have a strange feeling, so let's not automatically cross it out, but we know it's not a great choice. Setting is the place or the location of where the play is happening. Now, a room on a dirt pile is a place. So this seems like the correct choice. And in fact it is. And if you were in a time crunch, you could select this and move on. However, just to continue with the explanation, let's check out E, rehearsal. And we all know that rehearsing a play is when you practice not in front of an audience before the audience arrives. So this exactly has nothing to do with the room. So we're left with C and D, and C is has a very weak connection with this phrase, while D, setting, has a very strong connection. So we can choose D and move on. And just in case you were stuck or you had extra time, you could also realize that the last part of the sentence mentions the word stage scenery. And since stage scenery is almost the same thing as setting, that just gives us further information or further validation that we have chosen the correct answer. So, moving on to sentence completion problem number 2. sentence is, or this problem is a bit different in that we have two blanks to fill and we need to choose which set of answer choices is most appropriate. Now, the first word, ironically, gives us a big hint. This sentence is going to tell us something that we wouldn't necessarily think as being true. Something that's counterintuitive or something that we wouldn't necessarily think or believe right away. Continuing on, we read, an affluent society that purchases much more food than it actually needs suffers because of that blank. And let's stop here before we continue on. We don't need any more information. But what we do need to know is this word, affluent. Now, if we don't know the word, finishing this problem might be a bit tough. We can do it by eliminating questions, but if we know that affluent means wealthy or rich, it's a very big help to us. So, a wealthy society that purchases or buys more food than it needs suffers because of that what? Well, that must refer back to something in the sentence. And of course, the only thing that it really can refer back to is the word affluent. So, this word here must be the same or very similar or a synonym for affluence, such as wealthy. So, let's write wealthy in before we even look at the choices and continue on. Since in conditions of affluence, again, same word, different form, diseases related to overeating and poor nutrition seem to what? So what it's saying is that in a rich society, you wouldn't believe it, again ironically, but that society suffers a lot because since they have so much money, they can buy a lot of food and they overeat, and overeating causes diseases to do something. And the only thing that makes sense is to be present or to grow or to be more in an affluent society than in a poor society. So let's use the word to increase. Now, starting with this word wealthy, let's look at the choices and find which word or words most closely or are similar to wealthy. Lavishness means having a lot of something. So a lavish feast, you have a lot of food. That's similar to wealthy, so let's keep it. Overabundance, again, having too much of something. It might be similar to wealthy, so we can keep it. Corpulence means to be fat or to be big-bodied. So that really doesn't work well, so we can cross this out automatically. Practicality. Practicality and wealthy are almost completely different, so we can cross that out. Commonness and wealthy, again, very different ideas. So let's cross that out. So without even looking at the second blank, we've already gone down to two choices. Now again, if you're rushed for time, this could give you a 50-50 chance of getting the problem right. But if you just take a few more seconds and you try to find the word increase, then you can find the correct answer. So, which word is most similar to increase? Adapt or thrive? Of course, thrive means to grow and be present. So, this must be the correct answer. And what the author of this sentence is saying is that wealthy societies have more diseases because people can buy more food, eat more, but when you eat more, diseases tend to thrive or be present in that society. Finally, the last sentence completion problem, number 3. Because of the blank effects of the hot springs, tourists suffering from various ailments flock to the village's thermal pools. Now, again, this is quite an easy problem if we know all of the vocabulary words in this particular sentence. And the most important word is ailments. And an ailment is a health problem or a disease. So, once we know that, we can very easily figure out what the correct answer is because of the blank effects of the hot springs. So if you had an ailment, if you had a health problem, why would you go to the hot springs? What would the hot springs have to do to you if you had a health problem? Now, without even looking at the answers, we can very easily say they would heal us or they would decrease our suffering. So let's see which of these most closely relates to the idea of healing. Succulent. Succulent means juicy, or so a succulent pear is full of juice, it's very ripe. Succulent and healing have very little in common, so we can automatically cross that out. Redolent has to do with odor or smelling. Again, this is not a very common word, so if we didn't know what redolent meant, we could keep it here. So let's pretend we don't know what redolent means and just move on to the next one. Cerebral has to do with thinking or intelligence. Again, it has very little connection with healing, so we can cross it out. Mandatory is something that's necessary. Again, no connection with healing, so let's cross that out. And therapeutic. Something that's therapeutic is something that helps you, or helps the disease, or helps an ailment. Again, therapeutic and healing have almost exactly the same meaning. So we can choose this as the correct answer, even if we didn't necessarily know what redolent meant. Now, we do know that redolent has no connection, so we can cross that out. And further confirmation that you found the correct answer, even if you didn't know the word therapeutic, you could look for a clue. Therapeutic sounds very similar to therapy, and therapy is something that you do when you're sick, or when you have a disease. So that gives us one extra clue that we stumbled upon the right answer. Or not actually stumbled upon it, we found it by process of elimination. So these are the 3 sentence completion problems. Now let's move on to the reading comprehension. And again, to save time, I have written out the 2 paragraphs. Of course, the text is a little bit small. I hope you can read it. But don't worry if you can follow along with your handout. Now, the first thing that we should do with sentence completion of this type is realize that we're having 2 passages and we're asked to compare them. So we have to figure out eventually we'll have to figure out what the relationship is between passage 1 and passage 2. Now, one big hint is look at the very last sentence of the passage, and this should tell us the main idea. 9 times out of 10, we'll get the main idea or the conclusion by just looking at the last sentence. So in passage 1, we learn this behavior demonstrates that dolphins are aware of their individuality, indicating a level of intelligence that may be very near to our own. So, before we've even read the paragraph, we realize that passage 1 is telling us that dolphins have a level of intelligence near our own. Presumably he means humans. Let's go on to read it and highlight the important terms. The intelligence of dolphins is well documented by science. Studies show that dolphins are able to understand sign language, solve problems, and use objects in their environment as tools. So these are important. Understand sign language, solve problems, use objects in their environment as tools. Scientists also believe that dolphins possess a sophisticated language. Again, this seems like an important detail. Numerous instances have been recorded in which dolphins transmitted information from one individual to another. Again, this is not necessarily important information because we already know that they possess sophisticated language, so it's kind of a detail or additional information. A recent experiment proved that dolphins can even recognize themselves in a mirror. Okay, this may be an important fact. Something achieved by very few animals. This behavior demonstrates that dolphins are aware of their own individuality, again, indicating a level of intelligence that may be very near to our own. So in this paragraph, we have found the conclusion or main idea, and we have found the facts that support that main idea. Now, in moving to passage 2, we have to, before we even start reading, let's keep in our mind that passage 2 can basically do one of three things. It can either agree with passage 1, it can disagree with passage 1, or it can take some neutral territory somewhere in between. So, again, let's use our tip and look at the very end. Until we know more, all we can say is that dolphin intelligence is different. So, automatically we know that he's not agreeing or disagreeing. It seems that he's taking some type of neutral stance, which in fact he is. But you don't need to know that yet. Let's read through the paragraph and highlight the key ideas. Are dolphins intelligent? Dolphins have large brains, but we know that brain size alone does not determine either the nature or extent of intelligence. So even if you have a big brain, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're intelligent. Again, it's not disagreeing, but it's not agreeing either. Some researchers have suggested that dolphins have big brains because they need them for sonar and sound processing and for social interactions. Again, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Others have argued that regardless of brain size, dolphins have an intelligence level somewhere between that of a dog and chimpanzee. Again, nothing really related to dolphins' intelligence level as compared to humans, so it's not necessary. The fact is, we don't know. Important. We don't know how intelligent dolphins are. And comparisons may not be especially helpful. Just as human intelligence is appropriate for human needs, dolphins' intelligence is right for dolphin life. So, again, we found the main idea and the facts that support that main idea. And if we were to go a little bit further, we could write down or paraphrase the conclusions of the main idea. Dolphins are almost as smart as humans. So this is the main idea in a very short, paraphrased version. And in passage 2 we could say, dolphin and human intelligence cannot be compared. Now, with just this information, we can very easily find the solutions to all 8 problems. But I'll just read the first 4 since we're a little pressed for time. Excuse me. Number 9 says, in lines 2 to 8, here, in passage 1, the author mentions activities that suggest dolphins, A, are unusually sensitive to their environment, B, do not generally thrive in captivity, have a unique type of intelligence, are uncommonly playful animals, or have skills usually associated with humans. Well, automatically, if we highlighted and we take a look at our terms, understand sign language, solve puzzles, use objects in their environment as tools, possess a sophisticated language, recognize themselves in mirrors. Number E, or letter E, should immediately jump out to us. Have skills usually associated with humans. These are things which humans do and which we very rarely, if ever, associate with other animals. Again, if we're pressed for time, we can choose E and not even consider the other options. But let's consider them very quickly, just to show you why each one is wrong. Dolphins unusually sensitive to their environment. There's not a single fact that tells us anything about a dolphin's environment, so we can move on. Do not generally thrive in captivity. Again, captivity is when you keep a dolphin in a theme park or pool, or any animal in a theme park or pool. Again, we don't hear anything about captivity or being in the wild, so we can move on. C, have a unique type of intelligence. Right? Unique meaning completely by itself or not related to anything else. Well, it says that intelligence may be very near to our own, so the author is saying that dolphin intelligence and human intelligence are very similar. Therefore, dolphin intelligence cannot be unique, so we know it's the wrong answer and we move on. Are uncommonly playful animals. Nothing in here says anything about playing or being more playful than any other animal or even human, so again, we can move on. We know that answer E is the correct choice. Let's go for one more problem before we end the demonstration lesson today. Question 10 says the author of passage 2 would most likely respond to the last sentence of passage 1 by what? So, if the author of passage 2 read this sentence, this behavior demonstrates that dolphins are aware of their own individuality, indicating a level of intelligence that may be very near to our own, what would he say? We know that the author of passage 2 thinks that dolphin and human intelligence cannot be compared. Not that dolphins are more intelligent or less intelligent, they simply cannot be compared. Dolphin intelligence and human intelligence are completely different. So, let's read the choices and see if any of those is close to the main idea. A says, the author of passage 2 would suggest that intelligence in animals is virtually impossible to measure. He doesn't say it's impossible to measure, he just says it's different. So we can cross out choice A. B. Observing that intelligence does not mean the same thing for every species. That seems very close, so let's put an asterisk next to it and move on. C. Questioning the objectivity of the studies already conducted. He's not saying that these studies were wrong, just that maybe their conclusions were wrong. So it doesn't seem like a good answer. You can cross it out or put an asterisk next to it and move on. Noting that dolphin activities do not require a high level of intelligence. Well, we can immediately cross out that choice because author 2 says it's impossible to say which animals have high intelligence and low intelligence because intelligence cannot be measured as it relates to different species. So let's cross that out and move on. E says arguing that little isn't actually known about dolphin social behavior. Social behavior has nothing to do with intelligence. So let's cross it out and consider our choices. Probably we've only put one asterisk next to B, so we can circle B. That's the correct answer and move on. If we did put an asterisk next to C, we could compare the two answers and find that B is a much more strong choice. So we would choose B in comparison and move on to question number 11. There's two more problems left, but because of our lack of time, we won't consider them. I'd like to thank you for watching today. I'd like to thank the Princeton Review Korea for considering me for a candidate. I hope you have a good day and high scores. Thank you.